Well, tonight we have expert analysis on what has been a very busy week on the campaign trail. Loyola Law professor Jessica Levinson joins us live to get this started. Okay, so let's start with Donald Trump's recent push for the minority vote and that tweet involving the murder of Dwayne Wade's cousin. What do you make of the fallout from Trump's latest social media controversy?
Well, I think this is another example, frankly, of Donald Trump taking a tragedy and pointing to it and saying, look, my policies are right. And we saw him do exactly the same thing with the Orlando nightclub shooting. And much later, he then says, oh, and my condolences to the victims. And, once again, we're seeing that there's a national tragedy or there's some horrific event that happened, and Donald Trump is pointing to it and saying to his supporters, see, I'm right. We should be very concerned about a certain segment of the population.
Politicizing. He caught a lot of flack for that, for politicizing the murder. Well, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have traded some pretty nasty charges on the issue of race and racism. Clearly, the move is going to fire up the respective bases, but how will this play out with the independent and undecided voters? Because there are plenty of them still out there, some of the Bernie Sanders voters who still haven't decided what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think it's kind of unbelievable to a lot of people that there are still undecided voters because the candidates are so very different in so many ways. But I think that, in many senses, a lot of people are not voting for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. They're voting against one of them. And I think that this discussion of racism actually highlights that. And it's a discussion that I think feels very negative and polarized and turns off a lot of voters. So, how is this going to play with the independents and maybe the, people who would have supported more of a kind of conventional Republican candidate, or people on the other hand who would have supported Bernie Sanders? I think that this campaign in particular is like a Rorschach test where people are seeing the same thing, whether it be comments about racism or comments about national security, and they're taking wildly different views of what has just been said. So I think that these comments actually won't do much to help either candidate when it comes to the independent or the quote unquote swing voters. I think that the Trump's base will see this and they will say, yes, it's actually Hillary Clinton who's racist. I think that the Hillary Clinton supporters will say, finally, Hillary said what we've all been thinking, which is that his campaign is based on prejudice.
Well, Donald Trump has yet to release his final immigration plan after his primary. He promised to build a wall, have Mexico pay for it. He also promised to deport 11 million undocumented immigrants, and he was holding strong on that. Now you don't hear anything about that. How much of a risk does he run holding off this late in the election season?
So I think if it were any other candidate, I would say this is extraordinarily risky. You can't have the centerpiece of your campaign be something that you haven't really fleshed out. You have to have a specific policy. But this isn't any other candidate, and this isn't any other campaign. And so I think when it comes to Donald Trump, there is this group of supporters that, frankly, he will not lose as a result of having an immigration plan, which again is the centerpiece of his campaign, that is, to be charitable, less than concrete. I mean, he's very vague on whether or not we're actually going to deport people. He's now talking about, that we should have an e-verify system where employers can verify that people are legal immigrants, or that we should have visa tracking to see when people go in and out of the country with more specificity. But that's very different from what he said and what he's been saying for more than a year now, which is we need to deport these 11 million people who are undocumented workers. And so I actually think in this election, and only in this election, he's not running that big of a risk.
All right, Professor Jessica Levinson with Loyola Law, thank you so much for joining us live from satellite tonight. We appreciate your time.